What's poppin', everybody? We are back with our final review of November and November 30th episode of Raw. We had, of course, the sudden death triple threat match. Number one contenders to see who will face Drew McIntyre at the TLC pay-per-view, and it was obviously AJ Styles. So it was against two baby faces that recently came off the NXT brand, and they needed somebody at least essentially legitimate. And plus, babyface doesn't usually sell pay-per-view unless you're star power material. So besides that, we had the most boring episode of Raw. Even guys that I subscribe to sadly couldn't even take their time, waste their time of the day, and review it. And I'm not those type of people because I have nothing else to do in my life. But other than that, we of course had the episode. What happened? We had a moment of bliss with Alexa playing mind games with Randy Orton, going over the manipulation tactics. At least this is essentially a storyline that's relevant, and it makes sense because they previously feuded before for the world title. It has something to do emotionally with burning down his house, and it looks like Orton is finding down a new weakness, and that is Alexa Bliss, with the Fiend literally trying to plead for Randy, to get her back in his arms, and I thought that was a cool thing. And then we had the rest of the show. Dog. Listen, I need you to understand this. I hate Retribution with a passion. I hate it with a pure passion that this is what we tolerate. And by the way, we had a Symphony of Destruction match, literally probably a year ago, when Braun Strowman was feuding with Elias, and Elias got smacked with a freaking giant little violin thing. I don't know what it is. Some kind of giant rip-off violin that he got smushed on. So this is like the second one in history. The match was fine. It was better than their guitar on a pole match. The biggest thing was a broken part of the guitar, and he tried to hit the stab Jeff with it. He made a makeshift little knuckle and with guitar picks and tried to puncture his face. But it made like Elias look like a joke, and you make one of your more charismatic up-and-coming starters consistently lose gimmick matches where it looks like he would have the advantage. And it would be more entertaining if we had probably his bandmates like come around assisting him, trying to get away from most of the chances that Jeff has, and he wouldn't be able to take that dangerous ass bump where he literally took a swanton bomb near the corner of the ring post, where it looked like his neck was about to hit the metal ring post. The metal steps. That looked dangerous, but it was a decent finish. And we understand Jeff is a freaking daredevil. The guy is insane. Like, if you see most of the stuff he did when he was younger, makes a lot of sense he would do something like that. But, it's not the best way to get your top heel over, and especially somebody as charismatic as Elias with a lot of crossover ability. Hopefully their feud is done, even though it legitimately makes sense why Elias would be feuding with Jeff in the first place. And hopefully it does bring him some, decent, at least some stock into him being like a mid-card push or something. But technically, I just feel like they're just squandering him at this moment. Another guy they're just squandering is like probably Matt Riddle, probably Keith Lee, even though I think they brought back his old theme song now for once. And Aleister Black. Aleister Black, in my opinion, I thought, he would be like most of the guys that you see that are called up now. None of them have that main event appeal, like at least when EC3 came over to the main roster and they treated him like a jobber. I'm sorry, like Keith Lee, the way WWE is gonna treat him, they're just gonna make him feel like a smart and intellectual Mark Henry. Matt Riddle be an MMA Rob Van Dam, and they're just gonna make Elias just feel like a more charismatic Jeff Jarrett. That's how they feel about it. It sucks, too, because I like Elias out of most of the guys that come from NXT. And the rest of what we got, folks, was we had 2 Retribution members in matches. And none of them were watchable. We had I think it was an IG interview involving Ricochet, like trying to get Ali out of the darkness and all this stuff. And it's like, then later on, you have Mustafa Ali saying that Retribution doesn't fail, even though you guys been jobbed out like for most of the month when you guys feuded with the Hurt Business. You guys are bona fide freaking jobbers. You are as work as Sim Snuka, the Highlanders, Deuce and Domino, and La Resistance. At least La Resistance were a competent tag team at the time when they were relevant. They were like beating guys like the Dudley Boys in Evolution. There's no sort of legitimacy when you talk about the Retribution. And the only positive thing that happened was at least a pinfall win over Ricochet, even though Ali beat him off submission like a couple weeks prior. There is barely anything to call for the match. The only thing that happened was earlier on when Mustafa was trying to distract Ricochet. Dana Brooke came out of nowhere trying to call out for a reckoning after taking her out of action and missing out on Survivor Series the 2 weeks prior. That's the only relevancy why Dana Brooke would be there. And later on, she would have her match. Reckoning wouldn't even come out to try to surprise attack her, not expecting her to return from injury. Mandy Rose wouldn't be there. Dude, I'm just really pissed off. So earlier on, there would be a Miz TV segment involving Miz trying to negotiate with Sheamus to try to cooperate during the tag team match to, turn on his partner, make him cash in. And then obviously it would not work like the last time he had Miz TV, and it ended up with him getting assaulted, saying that he doesn't know how it is, talking about his family and all this stuff. It ends up with an assault with the briefcase. The briefcase looking back, and it's like, there's at least some semblance of everybody trying to get the world title. And there's at least interconnecting guys in the roster, but it's like the same guys from 2010. And even if you don't like these guys, they suck. They suck. Sheamus is either gonna get a minute run with the world title that's gonna last at least a month. They're probably not going to make McIntyre lose the title after WrestleMania. And this is going to have a butthead cash in after pretty much probably TLC or something. And Raw's just going to be forgettable. Later on, there would be an argument with McIntyre because he didn't show up to help Sheamus after his scuffle with Miz and Morrison. The only thing I remember from most of the conversation was him talking about how relevant his 2015 run was with the world title for 2 months. Even though he held more world titles before that time period, Miz. And then later on, they would say "be jealous," their old catchphrase back from the dirt sheet, bro. That's the only thing that got me disinterested over this entire show, because they want to have a semblance of Miz having a contracted talking ability, and that kind of declined over 2016. All he did was complain about that Daniel Bryan's an indie guy that's actually more over than him. And that's mean to say, but people are more want to be more obligated to Daniel Bryan than The Miz, that even has his own freaking TV show. And Total Bellas, 2 women that haven't been wrestling for a couple of years, are getting more televised ratings than both SmackDown and Raw, and NXT, and AEW. That's not a good look. Later on, there would be a tag team match involving Jobber Lana against Asuka against Shayna Baszler and Nia Jax. We would have some semblance of chain wrestling over Lana, but then earlier on there would be some cheap tactics to try to cut off the pin. There would be like a double swing involving Asuka and Lana onto the ring barricades. There would be like semblance of chain wrestling over when Lana and Shayna were in the ring, but then until Shayna was targeting arms, and then they would no-sell it earlier on. Hot tag on Asuka. Then later in the match, there would be like a Kina clutch that lasted, I think, way too long, even for Lana's level, and then a straight roundhouse kick for the knockout for the win. Lana pins Shayna Baszler, and they're probably gonna have a tag title match with because they have nothing else to do for most of the women's division, and they got Peyton Royce and Lacey Evans doing nothing. Naomi's nowhere to be seen because she's still injured. they're completely in a scuffle in who they even are willing to push, and how risque Nia Jax and how ugly Shayna Baszler is, and how smacked the Thunderdome fans are. They're still going to like push over like these boring chicks to probably defend their titles, and they're probably going to let Lana and Asuka win out of dumb luck over the last month. Oh god, my head's about to burst, bro. The match was forgettable. It was another basic finish. Earlier on, during the entranceway, they had a pump-up speech with Asuka speaking a bit of English, and it just looked so dumb, and it made Lana, even though she'd wrestled for like a few years now, it made her feel like a freaking bullied newbie that just came from NXT. And that would be a bit more tolerable of a storyline, because you would be purified the underdog. Except this chick is a completely sensitive, dumb, ugly, horse-faced, ponytailed freak coming around complaining about getting disrespected online because you're really not that good at your job. You can't even hold on to a sponsorship. I'm sick and tired of feeling like I always have to be too nice to these grown adults. I'm sorry, that just really gets me agitated. And the way I have to make sure that this even downgrades Asuka, that's one of the top chicks in the company right now. She's a women's champion, and she's coming around tagging with like the female equivalent of Eugene from 2004. Next up, we have Cedric Alexander getting a win over Xavier Woods one-on-one. And it was a pretty decent promo earlier on when they were mocking about the Hurt Business, beating them 3 times in title defenses. But then MVP trying to correct them, saying that they're tied up over a double countout, and then that they have another chance. So they have the generic, our tag teams are feuding, let's let one half of our tag team partners have a wrestling match. And the match was tolerable at best. We had some counters, some stiff shots, enziguris, then some moves from the outside, a quick breakthrough, and then a lumbar check by Cedric Alexander to pick up the quick win. It was an average match. Basically meh. Not that foreseeable. We had Cedric like celebrating, like, woo! I told him. It was fun. It was a fun little thing from Cedric, getting overly hyped out because he did foreshadow the Hurt Business will be, given the Hurt as well. Looked pretty nice. At least you have the Hurt Business still coming up in a one-on-one match, so probably they're gonna do like a TLC match come TLC. They're probably going to do like a chair match involving like Roman Reigns against like Kevin Owens and Smack on TLC as well, because WWE can't make creative stipulations anymore, so they have to make TLC for we need a tables match, we need a ladder match, we need a chair match. What the hell's a chair match? I'm just gonna beat the shit out of you with a goddamn chair. But you still win off pinfall or submission. What? It's so dumb. It's so dumb with a stipulation. That's as dumb as making a kendo stick on a pole match. Because kendo sticks are frequently used on WWE matches, dependent of the stipulation, and you can just find one under the apron. So I find that a dumb idea. Earlier on, they kept making vignettes over the Randy Orton and the Fiend, and then they kept making these repetitive ass like comeback stories of Drew McIntyre when he won the Royal Rumble, beat Brock Lesnar, won the world title again against Randy Orton, all this la-di-da-di-da stuff. And it's like, it's nice, and it's good to see a nice year for Drew McIntyre, because it's a good year for Drew McIntyre. But by God, I don't care. You know what else I don't care about? Matt Riddle. Matt Riddle can't do promos. Matt Riddle, for God's sakes, when people say you need to go back on NXT, you need to go back on NXT. I need Triple H to get out of his high horse and stop thinking that this is a third brand, ecolyptic, rip-off, Ring of Honor piece of garbage. Because it's not that. You need to work on your promos. You need to work on selling to the crowd, in-ring ability, an actual gimmick. Trying to at least conflict some semblance of a heat and actually get a defined character. Right now, what we know about Matt Riddle, he wrestles barefoot, he wears flip-flops, he acts like a rip-off Rob Van Dam, and he's borderline retarded. That's practically it. Keith Lee's just there, and he's a big fat black dude. Last time he looked badass when he flung around Adam Cole, when he stood tall while he was going head to head with Brock Lesnar. Where is that Keith Lee? And sometimes you see that sometimes, but it just feels like they don't have him that definite of a character. Especially when you have him wearing a freaking singlet. It looks dumb. Then earlier on, before the match, we had a skipper. He called Styles Skipper. Because of the rabbit. He talked to Keith Lee about, oh my god, dude, we get a world title match. And I was like, we get a world title match and that'd be so cool, bro. And then he had the dumb segments of like, it's definitely on what type of thing they're trying to intertwine with him. And it's still not making him a more funner character. Because it's just Rob Van Dam. And yeah, people, like, backstage, people gave Rob Van Dam a whole lot of shit. Because people knew he was a laid-back dude. But people treated him like he was freaking retarded. But at least that was definite his character. Even though we know Matt Riddle in real life is a shadow of a doubt mark, piece of shit, smart mouth, all talk MMA douche that comes around disrespecting legends. Even though the coolest thing you do is not even that impressive. You literally just flip out your flip-flops and things WWE can do it. They put pyro on that. That's the equivalent of when Bobby Lashley jumps up the apron and pyro came back when he was younger. Oh god, I'm so angry. So we have AJ Styles versus Keith Lee and Matt Riddle for a #1 contender spot in a sudden death triple threat match. Even though you made three one-on-one matches to qualify for a triple threat match. Sudden death is unless it's a tiebreaker. That's not how sudden death is supposed to be used in a sentence. That's so stupid. God. The match was fine. I'll give it that. We had some decent counters into selling up the arm, a triangle arm lock into trying to get him for the spirit bomb. Then there was the final flash knee. What? What kind of nerd moves are these, man? I mean, I love Dragon Ball. But don't implement this in my wrestling. Like, we're supposed to get casual audiences, not nerds. That's not how it works. When you think of big buff dudes fighting, you don't think of skinny nerds. You want actual people to watch your shows. God. And the coolest thing was he used, like, Matt Riddle as a bat and tried to toss AJ Styles out the equation for some parts of the matchup. We had, of course, a Styles little duck and cover, leapfrog into a drop kick. And it ends with a phenomenal forearm out of nowhere after it looks like he was about to attempt to bro Derek on him or something. So Styles qualifies. He will face off against Drew McIntyre at the pay-per-view. The match was basic enough, and it was an average match. I just wish there was some sublimated storylines, like MVP tried to interfere because he was disrespecting him or wasting his time or something. Earlier on, it did end up after he was talking dumb nonsense with MVP. Lashley came out of nowhere after, he lost via DQ for the qualifying match. He came out of nowhere attacking Matt Riddle. So it looks like they're going to do a feud with him and Lashley. Next up was Dana Brooke versus Reckoning. This is how great... Listen, no disrespect on Dana Brooke. She seems to be doing fine now with her tag team with Mandy Rose before the whole injury thing. And I don't mind. At least she's athletic. Decent body. I don't mind Dana Brooke. She's like the most, like, C+ chick you can get on the roster, and hopefully she succeeds. And I want Mia Yim to succeed too. This Retribution shit sucks. It does suck, dude. It sucks donkey nuts. So you have her losing clean after getting her injured, sabotaging her to be on pay-per-view. And for what? Reckoning wasn't even in the Survivor Series squad. And then she loses clean after a distraction of Mustafa Ali went wrong. And it ends with an attempt on a dropkick. It ends up on a roll-up for the pin. What a way to actually make your female look like great. And she comes off pretending to have like a spasm attack during a tag team match. But guess what? Retribution still lost. They are jobbers. They are jobbers. A makeshift team with Daniel Bryan and Santino Marella was more legitimate than Retribution has been for most of this year. Finn Balor's Universal title reign is more legitimate than Retribution has been over the last few months. Even if they won the Raw Tag Team titles, it wouldn't mean much because the Raw Tag Team titles are not that legitimate to begin with. So, even if they have some semblance of success, it would end up as quickly forgettable as when you forgot that Revival were like 3-time Raw Tag Team Champions. And that still didn't amount to much because they still wanted more money, even though they had no character, no buying remorse other than some old school fans. God, the show sucked. So after a crap segment, we also had one involving Miz and Morrison trying to consult with AJ Styles. And it ended up with AJ Styles trying to comply with Miz and Morrison, trying to help him cash in on Drew McIntyre because he thought it would be easier to take out the Miz because he knows he can beat the Miz other than Drew McIntyre. So that's at least basic enough. Then it comes on with Morrison agreeing with him, handing AJ Styles a pie. Then the tall Negro smells the pie. Saying that it's cupcake. It's like, what? Dude, don't make your bodyguard feel like... Just make him be like Tyson Tomko. Make him part of the show. Let him do matches AJ can't do. Let him fight some of the dudes for him, okay? I don't want him, big dudes to be, comedic relief. And WWE doesn't expect this because they want to make sure that, that big dudes could also be nice too. What's wrong with you? Why don't you want to make anybody look like a badass? I don't understand that. You have McIntyre. He has his own... I think that he's a pretty decent superstar. He's look legit in most of the year, and he deserves most of the stuff he got. But my guy is freaking bland as toothpaste. There's a mint on it, but that's just it. And they try to give him this rip-off Braveheart BS with his long-witted, 12-minute promo on trying to teach Miz to be humble. Gobble, gobble, gobble. So after his little interview with Charlie Caruso, it was the tag team match main event with him and Sheamus tagging against Miz and Morrison for the main event. And it was average at best. Counters into a Shining Wizard into a boot to the face while McIntyre was sitting down to a shoulder tackle that literally had Morrison ricocheting around the ring. That was fun. A belly-to-belly suplex, every power move that would be fun over the match, and it was going decent until they tried to get Sheamus out the equation. Styles came with a phenomenal forearm. Then that was the DQ finish. So Sheamus and McIntyre won. It ends up with Styles trying to get them to cash in. Miz failed after McIntyre waked up, giving him a Claymore kick. The bodyguard holds him up his ass and is like, I'll get Tweedle Jackass and the Green Giant. And then that's it. It was a pretty entertaining insult. But this was a really bad show. This is some of the reasons why WWE has lost some of its popularity. And you can just say that I'm an asshole. Most of my reviews are being negatives. Even when I try to give ratings, they're lower than yours. Well, because those are my ratings. Those are my opinions. I'm not going to change it all because you thought that Raw was an 8 while I thought it was a 5. Completely different points of views. You can keep that. But by God, it sucks. It really sucks. And if you can't tell why I expect more from it, because it's nearly 30 years of televised programming. So you expect higher rate, at least a higher standard for a $1 billion grossing company with a failed football league and something that was coming from 4 million viewers from at least after the Attitude Era, at least going now to a freaking 1 point. 1.8, 1.7. That's most of the average Raw is getting. And the average is at least at 2.1 sometimes for SmackDown when they're lucky. So you can't denounce how bad this is. And this even coming worse from Raw because it's supposed to be their A show with 3 hours stuck on the programming with more of the top stars, and it still sucks because they have no episodic storylining other than what SmackDown's doing, other than the Orton and the Fiend feud that I could at least get a grasp out of that because at least that's relevant. I mean, there's continuity in it, but I don't think that's gonna grasp more of a viewer because everybody knows it's a fat dude trying to ask for his girlfriend back, acting like a freaking simp. And then we have the rest of the lower card brothel that they have Lashley, the Hurt Business, just feuding with the freaking New Day. And yeah, the New Day have a literal accomplishment of a Hall of Fame group that should, like the Nation of Domination should have had. I'm being really serious. The New Day has no right to accomplish as much as they did. And now I have to waste my time going over this 25-minute review over this garbage. Most of the matches were forgettable, barely subjugated a plot to even know the understanding of why it has to be a TLC, why it has to be TLC. What's the meaning of TLC? What's high stakes that go into something involving table ladders of chairs, other than probably the title defenses into the show? I don't understand. Thanks, they're already wrapped up with the Elias and Jeff Hardy story feud now. It looks to be Hurt Business seems to be still involving the New Day, and now Matt Riddle. Keith Lee's like literally in the middle of doing nothing. I don't really care about the women's division, and McIntyre and Styles is gonna be probably a forgettable mess. Even though Styles has been entertaining more than your actual world champion, then yes, McIntyre has a look, and yes, he can deliver on a decent match, and he's not that bad of a promo. But I'd rather listen to Triple H's 20-minute promos than McIntyre's 10, and that's like a huge bad one. And I'm not trying to hate on McIntyre. Hopefully he does pretty decent. But I'd rather watch SmackDown's Roman Reigns than Raw's Drew McIntyre. And that just is a matter of taste. But right now Raw gets a 3 out of 10, dog. I can't see any other way of rewatching this. And you can say that about any other fan, because they'll be like, oh, dude, remember this episode? I should rewatch it. That comes to say when it comes to watching a Johnny Nitro ladder match involving Jeff Hardy for the IC Championship to watching AJ Styles versus Drew McIntyre for the world title. Probably in a TLC match or something. So, other than that, you can see how bad this is falling. And if you want more proof, just see the televised ratings. That's it coming from me, man. And I haven't done reviews this long in a long time because this was a long rant. And more than I can say the least, I expect more. And that's it coming from the DST show. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. I'm about to take some Tylenol.